understand a basic list of topics that you're going to be studying with your students, I'm going to now talk about scheduling. So the section about schedules in my handout has 3 parts: weekly planning schedules, yearly planning schedules, and daily planning schedules. The reason why I recommend starting with weekly planning is because if you're going to homeschool, you have to decide what your schedule is going to be like. You have to take into consideration your work schedule, your weekly commitments, and your personal preferences based on your family values and goals. Sit down with an empty schedule. When you sit down with this empty schedule, think about the non-negotiable activities that are required in your particular week. Then decide how long you want to homeschool and see how you can fit that into your schedule without it overtaking your entire life. Homeschool is one of the major parts of life in your family, but it doesn't have to be all-consuming. You as the parent have the freedom to decide how much time you spend on each of your life activities. Now let's talk a little bit more about the weekly planning. The purpose of this section in the handout is to show different ways to plan your lessons, if you're so inclined to write out a schedule. My recommendation is to start with a weekly schedule, as I've said before. The first part of creating a weekly schedule in a homeschool setting is to plan your family schedule and decide how much time you have for all the important stuff you want to accomplish in a week. Include school, home management, social life, leisure, and family time. The second part of creating a weekly schedule is to plan your school schedule. This is where you plan how long you want or need to spend on any given subject or skill. I will show you a guideline for this idea. In the handout, you will find a chart for recommended weekly teaching times. This chart shows how many minutes are recommended, not required, for each subject and each grade level. If you choose to buy curriculum, they might have a set time for this that's different, but these are the general guidelines. In the handout on this chart, I broke it up into 4 age groups. Lower grades, which is preschool through 2nd grade, upper grades, which is 3rd grade through 5th grade, middle school, 6th to 8th grade, and high school, 9th to 12th grade. I also included on this chart the subjects of reading, writing, math, social studies, science, creative arts, business, and home. And for each of these subjects, I wrote down how many minutes you should spend on the subject and how many days you should spend on the subject for each of the 4 different grade levels. Now I'm going to show you a sample family or school weekly schedule. This is a sample schedule for family and school. Obviously, it doesn't account for multiple ages, but it gives you an idea of the main categories of activities that can go on in a given week. Your schedule might look completely different based on your family needs and your personal preferences, but some of the elements in the schedule might be adapted to your schedule. This is just a guideline. Again, it is not required. When I was teaching 3 grade levels, my schedule looked completely different than this, but I used the same elements from this schedule. So this weekly schedule has the 5 days of the week and times by 30-minute increments or 1-hour increments on the left, and it shows how much time I spend on each subject. So you can see for reading, I have 3 days a week for 30 minutes, and then for Thursday we do co-op, and Friday we go to the library. So there's some reading involved in those subjects. Then for the writing block is another 30 minutes after a 30-minute break. We have 3 days of writing, co-op again, and then we have independent reading. After a 30-minute break, we'll do math for 30 minutes for 3 days. Then we have co-op on Thursday again, and we'll do another day of math on Friday. So we're doing 4 total days of math. After that break, we have 2 days of science or social studies, Monday and Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, we have like a family project. It could be a service project, community service, or helping out at a local nonprofit. Then we continue co-op on Thursday, and then Friday is a play day for the kids to hang out with friends. Then after science or social studies, we'll have 30 minutes of just playtime, free time, whatever you want to call it. On Wednesday, we continue that time block for the family project, and Thursday for co-op, and Friday for playing with friends. Then at 12 o'clock is lunch. That lasts for 1 hour. After lunch, we do read aloud for about an hour, and we'll do that 3 days a week. Then on Thursday after lunch, there will be reading and math. So 30 minutes of reading and 30 minutes of math. So actually doing 5 days of math. And then on Friday after lunch is more playtime. And I also included here as part of our home schedule an hour of chores, although it doesn't have to be an hour, but I blocked that time off. And that is pretty much every day or 4 days a week. Basic chores like putting the dishes away or doing 1 load of laundry or whatever you have to do on a daily basis. And then at 3 o'clock, we have 2 days of creative arts and 2 days of business. And then Friday would be like a family night. So my idea here is that whatever your children are doing for creative arts and business, they would do after the core subjects are completed in any given day. And they can spend as long as they want on this. Obviously, if you have a child who's in dance class, they're probably going to be doing that 4 or 5 days a week. So that's what they would be doing. But if it's only a couple times, like soccer, I know my kids were in soccer, that was 2 days a week. And then we can work on other things like businesses on the other 2 days. And that's the weekly planning schedule. Now we're going to talk about the yearly planning schedule. At the beginning of a year or a unit of study, I will write out a plan for how long it will take me to get through the unit or for seeing how much I can cover in a given year. The first part of a yearly planning schedule is to decide what weeks of the year you will be doing school and what weeks you will not be doing school. Write this out on a chart as shown below or a calendar, and I included that in the curriculum planning packet. The second part of yearly planning is to write out what you want to teach for those weeks. You don't have to keep a plan like this, but it shows you a good idea of what a yearly plan looks like, especially in case there's a limited time for teaching a certain subject and you have a goal you want to reach that doesn't last all year. If you make a plan and you don't meet the goals for that plan, then just move on what you missed to another week. It's flexible. You don't have to do this kind of plan unless you like to plan, but I just wanted to share some examples. So the first yearly plan example I have is a week-by-week breakdown of dates. This is where I decide which weeks we're going to have school. And there are usually 9 weeks in a quarter. So I would simply list the month and the days of that particular week and what holidays are included in there, so I would know which weeks are shorter. And then at the bottom, I write down what the full breaks are. You can have your fall break, winter break, spring break, and summer break listed there. You can use the following yearly plan in 2 ways. If you are planning your year based on the curriculum you bought, then simply plug in the lessons or units for each week. If you are planning your year based on topics you and your children choose, then plug in the ideas on the chart. This could be a fun way to get your kids involved and invested. Again, this is totally optional way of planning. Plan however you want or don't plan at all. It's up to you. The first example I have is a literature yearly plan for 4th grade. So I know I wanted to study Treasure Island for quarter 1, poetry and fairy tales for quarter 2, a biography for quarter 3, and a classic and Shakespeare for quarter 4. So I looked at those books and found out how many chapters there were and decided how many chapters I thought I could cover in a given week. I had to take into account whether I was having literature 2 days a week or 3 days a week or more. And that's how you decide what you're going to cover in a particular week. Now, if I didn't finish Treasure Island in the 6 weeks that it took me to read that, then I would just continue reading it until I was done. And then I would take out something else from the chart. The next sample yearly plan is science, and this is for 10th grade. I taught health and nutrition and basically just took the textbook that I had bought and wrote down which chapters I was going to cover in what weeks. And in this particular example, I knew it would take me 2 weeks to cover the whole chapter. So I skipped a week and would write down what chapters. Now, if it took us longer to get through a particular chapter than the allotted 2 weeks, again, I would just move everything down until I finished, or I could decide to skip it if I want. It's all up to you. This is just one example. Another example is the history geography yearly plan that I had for 7th grade. I decided in quarter 1 I wanted to teach ancient history, in quarter 2 medieval history, in quarter 3 early America, in quarter 4 an American hero. Of course, you can decide whatever you want to study for history or geography in each quarter by looking at the charts for the components of each course that I listed at the beginning of this lesson. The next thing I have in the handout is teaching materials for multiple age groups suggested yearly. So I would put my subjects on the left-hand side of my chart and then put as many columns as I needed for all the different age levels that I had. And of course, math is usually the one that is the most different from each grade level. My lower child would be in a different math curriculum than my upper child and my middle schooler. So I would just write down what curriculum they're going to use for those subjects in this chart. And then for science and history and literature, you could see I'm using the same program for each of the age groups. For English, I use a different program for each child. And for any workbooks that I want them to go through, I also listed those. The second chart I have for teaching materials is more about the subjects or topics I'm going to teach for each subject in each quarter. So let's say for science, quarter 1, I want to study trees. So then we would look for books or different resources to do different types of assignments on trees. And I want to just interject here that I will be discussing the different types of assignments that you could use without a curriculum later on in this course. So then for science of second quarter, I decided I wanted to teach birds. And for third quarter, we're going to study oceans. And fourth quarter, I left blank because I wanted to only do science for 3 quarters. Then it continues on for the rest of the subjects. For history and geography, I chose 4 different types of broad topics that I wanted to cover in each quarter. And for literature, I wrote down the 4 books that we were going to try to read in each quarter. And then the different topics we were going to cover for creative arts and for business are listed in each quarter. And that's it for yearly planning. Those are the different ways that you can plan your curriculum for the year. Now I want to talk about daily planning. The purpose of the daily plan is to prepare which routines will be taught on a given typical school day. The first way to use the daily plan is when you include multiple grade levels and multiple subjects in one day. This daily schedule is challenging, but it's doable if you plan exactly where everyone will be at a given time and what they will be doing. Because you can't be with every child all at once. So they have to be told what they should be doing at any given time during the school schedule. The second way to use the daily plan is less challenging with only 2 grade levels. The third way is not challenging at all and geared toward parents who want to do as much as possible together, all grade levels together, in a shorter amount of time. The gray shaded boxes in the charts on the handout are when the teacher is teaching. The other times, children are independent or being helped by older children. You're not required to do any of these plans for homeschooling successfully, but if you like to plan, here are some different ways to do that. If you look closely, you will see how I changed 3 different things for each of the challenging, less challenging, and not challenging plans. The first thing I changed was students from one level to another, depending on the subject, which means I might have a 5th grader who's more advanced in English join the 8th grader in their course or curriculum. The second thing I changed is the teaching times. The times will be different because you're not meeting with as many groups, and you may have more or less time on your schedule for each subject. The third thing I changed was the curriculum based on the length of allotted class time and how everyone was combined into the same subject if it was a knowledge-based subject. So in the curriculum-based daily schedule that's not that challenging, I would have my subjects slightly different. And that's it for the daily schedule. Hopefully this is helpful for you to see how you can manage 3 different grade levels at once. Now we're going to cover routines. I alluded to this before, and this is where I'm going to explain it. You might be wondering what kinds of routines I'm going to talk about in this section. Let me define what a routine is according to Noah Webster's dictionary. Routine means 1, a round of business, amusements, or pleasure, daily or frequently pursued. 2, any regular habit or practice not accommodated to circumstances. So that basically means a habit that you do no matter what's going on. Everyone naturally thinks of a routine as something you repeat or do every day. I want to expand our understanding of a routine in the context of homeschooling because my idea of a routine is the most powerful principle I teach. This idea alone will save you hours and hours of worry and stress about the progress your child makes or doesn't make in education for the next 12 or however many years you'll be homeschooling. All this talk about curriculum and schedules and planning is enough to stress out the most scheduled of us all. However, what I want to teach you about routines will make your homeschooling experience more free, more enjoyable, more meaningful, and more uplifting. My definition of a routine in a homeschool setting means that you are not focused on getting through lessons, getting through curriculum, or making sure your child gets it. Your focus every day is practice. Whenever you sit down to teach or make sure your child is working on schoolwork, you or they will follow the same routine every time, regardless of how many days you do that. Each skill and subject has its own predictable routine to follow. In modules 3, 4, and 5, I will explain each routine in depth. That's what my whole course is based on, teaching routines. If you have homeschooled for any length of time, you'll quickly find out that homeschooling can be hard. It takes teachers with a teaching degree at least 3 years to get good at teaching, and dedicated, organized, and highly structured homeschool parents at least 3 years to find their groove. Teaching is probably the hardest and most rewarding job in the world, but I have taken all that adjustment time out with the principle that teaching routines makes learning easy, enjoyable, and meaningful. The best homeschool routine is the one that is focused on mastering the routine for each subject. It might take time, and no matter how many times you have to adjust it, A routine is a habit or practice that makes room in the mind for more learning. I personally hate doing the same thing every day and every week. I'm a bit of a rebel and need variety, but I'm telling you that once you and your children develop the habit of a learning routine, you will never forget it, and once you get it, you can build on it. And that's the beauty of routines. They are meant to give you a solid foundation in learning. Learning this early on in your learning career will set you up for future success for sure. Now, how do you prepare for a routine? Because as we know, this lesson isn't about specifics of each routine, but there is a way to prepare. Let me start off by saying being brought up in wealth has its privileges and benefits. It can give you a head start in life if you're taught to manage it well and use it for good. The same is true for education. Being brought up into intelligence or smarts has its privileges and benefits and can give your child an advantage in life. You, as a homeschool teacher, do not have to be intelligent to teach intelligence. Intelligence is a lifestyle, and setting up good routines for your children is like giving them an advantage in life. You might not know everything there is to know, but the simple routines you will learn in this course will set you up for success as a homeschool teacher. These routines are what makes you stand out as a professional. You are getting the training you need to help give your kids an advantage. Routines are a lot easier to teach than teaching strategies, which are more involved and more varied depending on the child. Routines are not dependent upon a child. I believe every routine I teach can work for all children. What you have to understand about routines is that they can be modified and adapted to make learning as easy or challenging as you want. Like I said before, you can build upon a teaching routine. Start as structured or as loose as you want with how often you implement teaching routines. You'll have to try the routines with your children and adjust them as you go. You may want to try one until you're ready to introduce others, unless your child can handle learning multiple routines in the same day. There are recommendations for how often certain subjects should be taught, as explained earlier in this lesson under recommended weekly teaching times. But you don't have to follow that. Whether you are an unschooler or a traditional homeschooler, a teaching routine still works in either case. For example, if it says that you should teach reading to your first grader 5 times a week, but you only get to it for 2 days, it's okay. Implementing the teaching routine will still have the same impact on your child. Some children might only need 2 days and some children might need 5 days. A child who needs it for 5 days might at some point eventually only need it for 2 days. So it all depends, and it changes periodically. Regardless of how often you teach the teaching routines, they will get your child to the desired end. The pace at which you reach the desired end is out of your control. So that's why you have to be flexible and adapt. To set up your routines, start with a routine that's the easiest to learn for you and the one you are most confident you can implement. Then go from there. When your routine begins to not work, adjust it by taking parts of it out or add additional steps to it as you see fit. I will explain that a little later. Now is a good time to explain how to recognize when the routine isn't working. Every routine has an expected end or goal. When your child is not engaged in the routine or complains about the routine, you have to decide at that point if you should stop the routine for the time being or encourage your child to persevere. Those are the only 2 options, stop or keep going. In order to decide that, you might have to talk with your child and ask them about their basic needs. And we talked about that in a previous module. Are their basic needs for food, sleep, safety, love, and encouragement met? If you can solve the issue with a basic need, then great. If you cannot solve the issue with a basic need because they're all met, then you have to determine if the routine needs to be adjusted, add to it, or subtract from it. Usually, a child will be engaged in a routine or any task if they think they can achieve it successfully. Set your child up for success, and the days will come when perseverance comes easy. When we get into the specifics of each routine, it will help you understand how to do that. So for now, don't worry about understanding everything I've said. Just take it all in. The next thing I want to do is introduce routines. I want to briefly introduce each routine. Again, these routines are more than likely part of a regular school schedule, and you can skip days if you need to. Whenever you have a regular school schedule, you can follow these routines. If at some point you want to skip a routine or cannot finish the routine in the time allotted, then just come to it or continue it on the next day. Routines are designed to be completed in one sitting, so try your best to adjust and complete it in that time frame. But if not, you can come back to it on another day or cut it short. Feel free to create your own routines for the subjects that are more personal. The main subjects I will expound on in the following lessons are for the school-related routines. You don't need to worry about the following routines as I read them aloud. I will help you prioritize them in subsequent lessons of this course. The first routine is the morning routine. That is the most obvious. You get up, you eat breakfast, you get dressed, whatever it is you want your kids to do, set up that morning routine for them. By the way, in the curriculum planning packet, I have for you a checklist of these routines so that you can check off that you did them in any given day if you are so inclined to do that, or your child's interested in checking off boxes. The second routine is the spelling routine. In any given setting for spelling, you're going to go through these 8 routines. So it might take you anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes, maybe 45 to 50 minutes, and you can skip some of them if you want, but these are the parts of the routine that students will go through. Number 1, phonogram review, then spelling practice, spelling dictation, read for spelling and reading, syllable division, word analysis, sentence construction, and spelling assessment. The second routine is the reading routine. For the reading routine, you are doing phonemic awareness for the younger kids, reading fluency practice also for the younger kids, reading comprehension, vocabulary development, vocabulary practice, and I put in there visiting the library because that should definitely be part of your reading routine. For the writing routine, I have plan writing assignment, write your draft of your writing assignment, revise it, edit it, present it, then do some grammar practice, not on your writing assignment, but as a separate part of the routine, and then do paragraph editing, which is something I added in there that you would spend just a few minutes a week working on that. Next is the math routine. In the math routine, you're going to drill your students like a quick practice review type of thing, and then you'll do the lesson that you want to teach. Then you'll have some kind of exit ticket or assessment of how much they understood the lesson, and then you'll want to spend some time practicing or playing games with the concepts that you've taught. Next is the lunch routine. This is probably pretty obvious. You could set up the table, help cook. You could, of course, you'll be eating together, cleaning up possibly, and possibly doing one chore. For the afternoon routine, this is also a personal one, but you could gather together for the read aloud, which could be science or social studies. And you could have the students participate. This is part of the routine. They have to participate by asking questions and answering a question. And then they can work on assignments that are more independent related. Then you have the free time routine, which is decide which activity you want to do in creative arts or business. and then spend unused time and leisure. So let's say you wanted to do a creative arts or business project or task, then when you're finished in that free time routine, you just have time to play. Then there's the dinner routine. You could help cook, prepare the table, eat, share highs and lows, clean up, that kind of stuff. But that'll be more personal to you. And lastly is the bedtime routine. Brush your teeth, take a shower, look at books at bedtime. If those are some of the things that you do for your bedtime routine, then you can include those here. So now let me conclude about my thoughts on routines in summary. The course workbook part of this lesson is called the curriculum planning packet, as I mentioned to you before. I created templates for you to use if you want to plan the way I showed you. Included in this packet are the weekly planner, weekly family schedule, yearly plan calendar, quarterly curriculum plan, the school schedule, a lesson plan worksheet, and the daily routines list. These are all printable, of course. If you wish to receive an electronic editable version on Google Slides, let me know. Don't set yourself or your children up for frustration or disappointment. Much study is wearisome. Try to keep a good balance between school time and time doing other activities. School should not be laborious. It's important to teach your children how to focus and be diligent for the time that they are doing school, but also have time for elective activities. Each routine is meant to be short, and the length of the lesson varies between ages. The goal is to give your child mastery of skill-based subjects and exposure to the knowledge-based subjects. If you follow a set curriculum with a set number of lessons you're expected to complete, try not to stress when students get behind. Don't always advance at the same rate each year. Some children learn a little at a time and build it up over time, while other students can go over it for many months or years until one day it'll all make sense and they'll get it. Go with the flow and allow your children to grow at their own pace. That's the beauty of homeschooling. Keep your family values and goals in mind, and make sure you don't neglect the most important thing, which is to keep a strong connection with your child. Don't let curriculum or planning get in the way of that. That's it for Lesson 5. Happy homeschooling! If you like this video and want to see more content related to homeschooling from a Christian perspective, make sure you subscribe to this channel and ring the notification bell to stay informed of new videos when they come out. And if you're interested in my curriculum content, teaching resources, or training services, visit my website at theprincipledteacher.com.